Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Ron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today we are going to be continuing What If Issei Was the Ghostwriter? High School DxD, Spirit of Vengeance, Season 1, Part 2. But as always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, please check out our earlier uploads from earlier in the week and make sure that you watch all of the installments for this series so you can be caught up on everything before we continue with the next part. I do want to briefly say thank you to everyone who has made this series a success so far. The turnout for the views of this video is starting to go through the roof, so I can tell you guys are really enjoying this series so far and everything that has to come with it. So that is really good to see, and I hope that you guys will continue to support with this series as we move on into the next parts. Where we last left off, we had Issei meeting with Asuya for the first time, like they did in the original. However, right now, Issei only has the ghostwriter power in his arsenal, and he is not a part of the House of Rias Grimory. But will he join in the future? What other twists and turns will there be with this story? Certain characters may end up living a lot longer than you think, and just where will this all play in the grand scheme of things when we reach its inevitable conclusion? But without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Issei would learn that Asuya was new to town, and that she had actually been trying to find a local church, although she didn't have a good sense of direction. Since he didn't have anything better to do, he decided he would offer her a ride, not really thinking much of it. The two of them getting in his car as they drove through town. Getting a chance, he decided to show her around where all the different spots and places were, before eventually arriving to the foot of the hillside, where on top the church resided. Asuya would get out of the car and she would thank Issei so much for his help, as she was truly grateful to him, and he seemed really nice. She hoped that they could meet again someday, and Issei, he kind of felt the same. As he drove off and eventually went to school, he would be greeted by his friends Motohama and Matsuda. They were still worried about him after the funeral and all, but that really wasn't what bothered Issei in that moment. It was the fact that they didn't know who Irina was. No one did. It was as if she never existed. This now let Issei know that there was more at work than what he was originally told. There was no body that was ever found at the crash, and as far as anyone else was concerned, it was only his parents that had died. But where could Irina have gone? This couldn't have been a coincidence. He thought about speaking to Lady Mephisto, but she was pretty hard to reach. She wasn't always at the Red Kavana. There were other places that needed her attention, and getting in touch with her wasn't as easy as it would like to be. So for now, he was on his own. There wasn't really much else he could do except carry out his role as the Spirit of Vengeance, cleansing the town of various evils wherever they might lay. And this didn't stop at just stray devils or other random fallen angels. This included humans, and this did earn him the attention of the Occult Research Club. It all started one afternoon when class was over, Issei slinging his bag over his shoulder, preparing to go home and rest up before a nightly ride, when he would be stopped by a fellow second year, his name being Kiba Yuto. The young man would invite Issei over to the Occult Research Club room, as there was something that the president wanted to speak to him about. Issei wasn't dumb not to know who the president was. Third year Rias Gremory, a girl said to be from Eastern Europe. Her beauty was absolutely personified, and it didn't dawn on his mind, but he did like the idea of being in the presence of Double D's. Despite everything that happened to Issei, his love for women hadn't left him. You could say that it merely took a back seat in the grand scheme of things. With everything that was going on all at once, he didn't get a chance to pursue his pleasures nearly as much. But, unknown to Issei, he had undergone a transformation of sorts. It wasn't really so much that was anything new about him, but it was really just in the way he carried himself. An aura, an ominous presence whenever he walked down the halls. It made the girls do a double take when they saw him. He didn't really pay it much mind, and it was the fact that he didn't that the ire of the other females continued to grow towards him more and more. Unknowingly, Issei's rather aloof demeanor and his seeming to not care about much of anything, that seemed to attract more than he thought. As they made their way to the club room, he would meet with a young girl named Koneko Tojo, as well as a girl named Akano Hamajime. They were surprised to see that he would come, and they were happy to meet him. Issei also being shocked that the club had such beautiful women among their ranks. Before long, Rias would make her way from out of the shower, fully dressed and sitting at the president's desk. She would welcome Issei, and as Issei looked around the room, he could sense an aura about them. He had been able to pick up and detect the differences between a fallen angel and a devil, so it really wasn't all that hard to discover that they were already devils, and it seemed as though they could pick up on it. So, Issei Hyodo, it seems you've been pretty busy in our town, haven't you? Yeah, Miss President, you could say that I have been. And I'm guessing that this is the welcoming party you've set out for me. So, you can already tell? Indeed, you're devils, aren't you? All of the members would show off their devil wings at once, confirming Issei's suspicions. I'm surprised to find that you know what we truly are. May I ask, who is your master? I don't really have a master per se. At least, she doesn't really tell me to do much of anything. She merely gave me a power after I died. And what is her name, if you may tell? Lady Mephisto. Everyone in the room would go deathly silent, looking at one another nervously. Did he really say what they thought he said? Lady Mephisto? Rias would look at Issei sternly. And just what business does Lady Mephisto have in my territory? I don't really know. Look, I don't know what her goals are or what her deal is. Really isn't anything that I'm all too interested in right now. All I know is that me and my sister were in a crash. I wake up and the next thing I know, I'm her spirit of vengeance or whatever. Spirit of vengeance? Yeah, spirit of vengeance. At least that's what she calls it. Another writer. And do tell, what was your sister's name? No, she wasn't my sister, really. She was a childhood friend who grew up with me. Her name was Irina Shido. I see. So that girl then. It seems as though they've made their move. Wait, so what's going on exactly? Do you know where my sister is? That I do not know, Issei. However, we were aware that she had disappeared. What? If you knew she disappeared, why didn't you tell me sooner? Issei, we thought that your memories had been erased as well. We too do not know what has happened, but it seemed as though the night of whatever accident you had, whatever has happened, something has occurred to where your sister has been wiped from the memories of everyone in this town, save for anyone who didn't have the ability to protect themselves. And we just assumed that you would have been included, but based off of everything that's been happening recently, that doesn't seem to be the case. I see then. Issei would go on to explain to them about the one known as Rainier, the fallen angel who had seemingly caused all of this destruction. It didn't surprise them that the Fallen would be behind it, but the fact that Issei and Irina were the targets, well, that was something they couldn't fully understand. They had no real way of knowing why they would be on the target list for the Fallen ones, not knowing if they had done anything in the first place. All the same, they would warn Issei to be careful while he was out and about, and that he should be mindful of who he gets involved with, especially Lady Mephisto. They would check to see if he had the crest, and he didn't. So technically, he wasn't actually in her household. She merely bestowed upon him some power. So technically, you could say that he was still a stray of some sort. They would warn that he should be careful with what he does. He might earn the fury of other parties at play here. Of course, Rias did have the inkling to offer him a position in the House of Grimmery, but when she went to, Issei, however, would respectfully decline. Not that he didn't want to be in the House of Grimmery. Looking around, he saw a lot of potential. A lot. But right now his focus was on other matters, and he couldn't afford to be preoccupied. Rias would respect his decision, but would assure him that the offer would still stand if he ever changed his mind. With that, Issei would leave for the night. As he did so, he was out in his car driving through the town, not sure of what new threats or dangers he would find along the way. As he continued to drive, he would eventually sense some danger coming from a house at the end of the street. As he pulled over, he walked up towards the door. He could feel an ominous presence within, that of a devil, and that of someone else. As he opened the door, he could hear fighting from the end of the darkened hall, where there was a room that was lit up, seemingly with some candle. As he quickly made his way inside, he would see Koneko in the room. Her arm had been cut, and it seemed as though she had been shot. She was holding her own though, and he could see that she were fighting against some man dressed in royal robe of some sort, with long white hair, holding a sword and a gun, the two of them moving immensely fast as they continued their flurry of violence. Issei would quickly yell out to Koneko, asking her what was wrong. Koneko, shocked to see that Issei was here. The man would then turn to Issei with a sadistic grin on his face. So, you've called for backup, and I must say, he's rather unimpressive for my taste. But it really doesn't matter. In the end, all of you devil scum are going to be nothing more but chopped sashimi when I'm done with you. It didn't take Issei long to see where the danger was. His skull, immensely turning into that of heat, as he flamed on into the aura of the Ghost Rider. Freet was surprised by this. He had heard stories of the legendary skull-flamed riders themselves, but never thought that he would actually be in the presence of one. He would attempt to hold up his gun to shoot at Issei, and he would hit him in both of his shoulders. Issei would yell out in pain, but it didn't last all that long, his power making him a lot more resistant. It was going to take a lot of holy power to do any significant damage. Some little blessed bullets were a little more than a pinch, child's play, and Issei made that very clear from the jump, as he walked over to Freed, grabbing him by the collar, slamming him all throughout the room. Freed would then take his sword and slash at Issei's chest, causing him to yell once again before Freed would choose to use his bullets to stun him a little bit more, as they continued their flurry of violence. Koneko resting over to the side as Issei continued to beat down on Freed, but Freed, having immense speed, was able to keep his distance for a while. He would yell to the back for Asuya to finish with that barrier, and that she was truly a dim-witted nun. From there, Asuya would slowly crawl from where she was hiding, apologizing. But when Issei saw her, he would become distracted momentarily. Asuya would be afraid as she saw the flaming skulled man, not sure of who or what it was. Issei would depower himself immediately, revealing himself to her. Asuya would then be shocked. She didn't think that would be Issei. Just what was he? What had he become? Freed would then explain that this boy had made a deal with the devil, and that he had gained the power of the spirit of vengeance. He had become, in effect, a Ghost Rider. While technically speaking, the Ghost Riders weren't to be seen as enemies, if he were going to be getting in the way of their plans, then he was no different than the devil scum that they were forced to fight and to exterminate from the earth itself. Issei would apologize to Asuya. He didn't mean to lie to her or to deceive her, and he truly didn't mean any harm by it. Asuya understood this, and she knew that Issei wasn't someone to be afraid of. She would beg for Freed to spare his life and to not harm him. However, Freed was not in the mood. Instead, he would quickly grab Asuya and throw her against the wall, becoming rather sadistic in the way that he touched and groped upon her, making it very clear that any sympathizer would not get any mercy from him. That was more than enough to piss off Issei. The way that he attempted to harm her, he wouldn't allow it. He wasn't going to stand for it at all. Issei would quickly grab Freed by the arm, telling him to remove it as he burned him, before throwing him against the other side of the house. Just then, another spell circle would appear, and the other members of the House of Grimry would arrive to check on Koneko. She had been tired from a lot of the work that she had been doing, and they got worried when she didn't get back rather quickly, so they came to check in on her. They also got a chance to see Issei for the first time, in his Ghost Rider form, now getting a chance to see the spirit of vengeance up close and personal. Rias was amazed at his power. It was truly staggering, and the fact that he wasn't a full devil yet was only a testament to just how powerful the spirit of vengeance could be. She would tell the others to take Koneko and that they were going to need to make their way out. She would ask Issei if he was alright, and he would tell her that he was fine. Freed, seeing the writing on the wall, knew that he couldn't take all of these guys on by himself, and so he would quickly call for backup, Koneko alerting them that more fallen angels were getting ready to show up. They all prepared to leave, but Rias had a look of worry. She would tell Issei and Asuya to get out of here as quickly as they could, and that they could buy them some time. But Issei would tell her that everything would be alright, and that they just needed to go and get Koneko to safety, and to leave Asuya to him. Rias would nod, and they would leave and make their way back. As Asuya got behind Issei, Issei would tell her to close her eyes, and to look away. Asuya would nod and do so, as the house was descended upon by fallen angels. Issei would let his flame burst, and before long, the only thing that would be left would be ashes, bone, and burning feather. In the midst of the chaos and destruction, Issei would pick up Asuya, putting her into the passenger seat of his car as they drove away into the night. When they eventually arrived back to his apartment, Issei could see that she was very tired. She had been through a lot, and he didn't want to disturb her anymore. He would carry her into his bedroom and tuck her in, before eventually going back into the front living room and laying on his couch. He had been extremely tired, more so than he had been in a while. It seemed as though the fighting never stopped, like it never ended, like a flame that wouldn't die out for a moment. He would try to drift off, but he would have a dreamless sleep, only being able to briefly recover his strength as the next morning would arise upon them. Asuya would wake up in the bed, unsure of how she had gotten there. As she looked around, she didn't recognize this place at all. As she slowly got out of the room, walking, she would see Issei asleep on the couch. He looked cold. He didn't even take a blanket for himself. She would quickly grab the blanket from the bedroom and throw it upon him as she sat next to him. He got warmed up, and she could see the look of satisfaction on his face, and she was happy. She could also see some of the scars of battle, and she used her abilities to heal him, letting Issei have a much more comfortable sleep. Before long, he would awaken a few hours later. He would awaken to see Asuya snuggled up beside him. This caused him to blush a little, as he would slowly wake up and move her over, as she awoken as well. She would thank him for helping her and for saving her life, and Issei assured her that there was nothing to it. There was nothing to worry about. After helping her along, he would go and get them some breakfast. As the two of them ate and talked, Issei would learn more about Asuya's life. He would learn of how when she was younger, she had been abandoned at an orphanage, and how at a young age she discovered her abilities to heal others who were sick or hurt, and how she thought that it were a blessing from God in a sense. However, one day when she attempted to help an angel who had also been injured, as well as that of a devil, she was branded as a heretic and ran out of town. From there, Asuya had never really had a home of her own, but she had never looked at it as a bad thing. She had always tried to look on the bright side. Truthfully, all she wanted was to make friends and to have a place where she was truly wanted. The more Issei thought about this, the more he felt as though he wanted to protect her. He wanted to be close to her no matter what, and not allow anything bad to ever happen to her. He decided he could skip school for a day, since he wasn't going to do much anyway, and he decided he was going to take her out. The two of them would go on a date, if you will. They went out into town. They went to go to the arcade. They went to go get food, and all in all, he showed her a really good time. The two of them enjoying each other's company. Asuya getting a chance to experience many things that she would have never gotten to experience before. She was truly happy to be with Issei. As their day wound down with one another, the two of them walking with each other through the park, Asuya would express her gratitude towards Issei for everything that he had done, and she only wished that a day like this could never end. As she went to the water fountain to go get a drink while Issei sat on the bench, his senses would go off instantly, and before he knew it, he was completely surrounded by more fallen angels, who had been given orders to attack him on sight. They would launch their spears of light at him, but Issei would dodge and evade, before entering into his Ghost Rider form. He would go and attack at the fallen angels, engaging in the fight at once. However, as he looked across the court side of the park, he would see Issei turning around to see what was happening, and he yelled at her to stay away and to let him handle it. She did just so, but this only played into the enemy's hands. For when she wasn't looking, Rainier would appear behind her, with a blade of light to her throat. Issei turned to see this, and he yelled at Rainier to stop, as she was going too far. But Rainier only laughed, telling him that only a fool would play the hero, and that now she had gotten what she wanted, so she didn't care what happened to him. And with that, she would teleport away from Issei and disappear. With the two of them leaving, Issei, surrounded by the enemy, he would yell out completely enraged as he used his flame to burn them to cinder, grabbing and ripping away at their wings, slamming them into the ground and destroying them completely. His anger, his rage, it had now boiled over into a point where he could not contain it any longer. Issei would quickly get inside of his car as he went racing towards the school. He needed help. He needed to know where he needed to go. For Issei's sake, he had to do something, and do something quickly, as now the fallen angels were about to make their move. In less than 5 minutes, Issei arrives to the Occult Research Club, making his way into the room where everyone was seated. They were surprised that he had shown up, and that he had shown up in such haste. Without wasting any time, he would quickly tell them everything that had happened, and how Issei had been taken. After explaining everything to them, they would tell him the news that they had discovered themselves. That it seemed as though the fallen angels had been gathering in this town because they had a plan that was at work, and that in all likelihood Issei was involved in their plans. They would tell him that they would be gathering together in the church on top of the hillside. Issei, knowing directly where it was, he was making his way to leave quickly. They would warn that if he tried to go in there on his own, there would be a plethora of priests and fallen angels. Even with this power, they warned that things could get a little too dicey for him. But Issei would tell them that this was nothing that they needed to worry about. He could handle this on his own, and he had no problem doing so. The others would look to Rias, wondering what she was going to do, and she allowed him to leave. He wasn't a part of her household, so she had no reason to stop him. She could only give him the warning, and whatever advice that would work best for him. And Issei appreciated that. However, before he could leave though, Kiba would be behind him, and Koneko as well. Koneko was thankful that Issei had helped her in her time of need, and she felt as though she wanted to return that favor. And for Kiba, he wasn't really too fond of fallen angels either. They assured that they were coming whether he wanted them to or not, so he might as well allow them. Deciding that he could use the help, Issei would agree, and all three of them would get inside of his car as they went racing towards the hill. As for Rias and Akano, they would be on the outskirts, as they had other matters to deal with. That being the other congregating group of fallen angels on the outside. They decided that they would confront them, and that they would allow Issei and the others to deal with what was going on the inside. It didn't take Issei long to get to the front of the church. Stepping out of his car immediately, his skull burning into that of the Ghost Rider's flame, he kicked down the doors, only to see that Free was on the other side waiting for him. Free would taunt them that if they truly wanted to get to the fallen stray nun slut, then they were going to have to get under the altar, But to do that, they were going to have to get past him. He would go charging at them at once, but Issei wasn't in the mood. He would give him a backhand and send him flying straight out of the wall, flying miles away into the sky itself. They could tell that Issei wasn't playing around. He would reach under the altar itself and completely devastate and destroy it. Finding the entrance, they would all make their way inside, only to see Issei strung up to an iron cross by chains, completely wrapped, as Rainier stood in front of her, pulling something out of her. Kiba would look to Issei as Issei would ask him what was going on, and Kiba would sadly have to explain that what they were attempting to do was take away her sacred gear, a special power that existed in this world. But to take away the sacred gear, that was essentially taking someone's life away. The moment Issei heard this, without warning, he would blitz through all of the enemies down below, with Koneko and with Kiba following behind, helping and aiding as they would defeat the stray priests and the other fallen angels all around them. Issei would quickly get on top of the altar, where he would attempt to throw a punch at Rainier, and it connected, knocking her down into the ground, causing her to yell out in pain. Though she had gotten what she had wanted in the first place, she had gotten the sacred gear of Twilight Healing, and now that she had it in her arsenal, she was able to recover. Although, even if she were able to do so, the pain was still imminent and great. With that, Issei would grow to the altar immediately. He would pull the chains down that were wrapped around Issei. She was faint, but she still had some life in her. Issei would reach up, and she would caress Issei's face. He assured her that everything was going to be fine, and there was nothing that she needed to worry about. He wanted to keep up the smile for her, to assure her that everything would be fine. But even then, he knew that there was still a fading as he looked back towards Rainier, this time with his human face. He asked her why. Why was she doing this? What was the reason behind it all? This senseless violence. Rainier only continued to mock him, telling him how foolish he was to believe that he could play the hero. If he had shown this type of resolve earlier, then maybe he wouldn't have lost his sister. Maybe he wouldn't have lost his family. That was more than enough to piss Issei off. As he went to lunge and attack towards Rainier, she would fly away, leaving him to be dealt with by the others. Kiba and Koneko could feel that they were starting to get overtaken, but that would quickly dissipate, because the next thing they knew, their enemies would be defeated. Dark tendrils would appear from the ground, pulling them under. They could feel a dark aura emanating from Issei, one that they had never experienced before. If they didn't know any better, they thought they were in the presence of Rias herself. This power was on par with that of the Annihilation Wave. No, something even greater than that. Issei carried Issei's body as he walked slowly past them all. Corpses littered all around them. As he made his way up, he would find himself within the main hall of the church, as he laid Issei down on the pew. Issei would be taking shallow breaths as Issei held her hand. He assured her that everything was going to be fine, and Issei would thank him for everything that he had done. thanking him for taking her into his home, for protecting her. But Issei didn't feel that way at all. Who had he managed to protect? His best friend, Irina, was gone. His parents were dead, and now he had lost Asya as well. What more did this world want from him? What else did he have to lose? Asya could see Issei trying to fight back the tears. Even in her weakened state, she reached up her hand to wipe them away, as she pulled him into a hug. I can feel the conflict within you, Issei. This burden that you have to carry. You know, the only thing I prayed for was that you would find peace someday. I know it hurts to carry all of this anger, this rage inside of you. It burns you from the inside. The only thing I want is to be able to heal you, because I can feel the hurt and the anguish. I am so sorry for everything that you have been through in your life, Issei. I'm truly sorry that I couldn't have been there for you when you needed me. Hearing these words only broke Issei's heart even further. Even in her dying moments, she wasn't concerned for herself. She was concerned for him. That was just the type of person she was. If such a loving and caring soul is her, why did she deserve this fate? What had she ever done that was wrong? What did she ever do that was so bad that she could be as forsaken as this? Rainier continued to laugh at Issei, and Issei only looked at her in disgust and contempt. Issei asked her if she were finished. And what if I am? Does it really matter to you? I have the Twilight healing on my side. There's no way you're gonna beat me. Shut up. What was that? I'm sorry. Did the pathetic dog have something he wished to say? I said shut up. Asya didn't deserve this. She didn't do anything wrong. So why? Why? Why, you ask? Because in the end, this was always going to happen. Do you think that even if I hadn't come, that she were going to be safe? I could have protected her. Oh please, you couldn't even protect yourself. How on earth were you ever going to protect her? You are pathetic, you are weak, and you are worthless. The sooner you recognize that, the better off you will be. As Issei's eyes rose up to meet her, Rainier would feel a sense of dread. For when she looked into his eyes, they were completely black, devoid of light, devoid of all semblance of life itself. To look into his eyes, she felt as though she were looking into a dark void itself. Rainier, you have committed a multitude of sins. My anger against you blazes, and you will pay for what you have done. For you, there is no mercy, there is no escape. You will be taken to the grave, and you will be burnt in my vengeance. You will know what it means to be at the foot of your Maker. Do not cast cast your screams onto the heavens, for you have been forsaken. The only one who is the arbiter of your fate is me. Issei would take the chain that had been wrapped around Asuya as he pulled it away from her and whipped it into the air. The chain would be emitted with a great fire as he lashed and whipped it towards her. Rainier attempted to use her light spears to attack him, 2 of them piercing him in the leg, but he shook it off like it was nothing. Rainier only continued to feel more and more fear as she tried to fly away, only for Issei to grab her by the chain and rip her back towards him. He slammed her into the ground, Rainier using her power to try to resist, only for him to grab both of her wrists and pin her down to the ground itself. As Rainier looked up into his burning, his cold and lifeless eyes, the penitent stare would take over. She would be filled with regret, with anguish over all that she had done. She would feel the pain of all of those of whom she had betrayed, all of those of whom she had double-crossed. And now, feeling all of that pain, all of that suffering, it caused her mind to break, and she felt herself reverting back. She started to remember things that she had long since thought were hidden. As she looked up to Issei, her eyes began to shift. The dark and malevolent force that was around her started to change. Issei, wait, please. I didn't do this. I was only hired to. Please. Please let me make it up to you. Please don't. Make it up to me? Can you bring her back? Can you bring any of them back? If you could bring back even one person, then I could forgive you. But we both know that won't happen. Wait, she's not dead. Eren is alive. What? Issei would stop as he lowered his fists. He grabbed her by the collar. He warned her that if she was lying, she would regret it. But she would confirm it so. She would tell him that Irina was alive. She swore in the name of heaven itself that she was alive. As the others made their way into the hall, the only thing they would hear would be a blood-curdling scream before a great flash of fire that would obscure their vision. When they walked over to Issei, the only thing they saw was burning ash. Nothing remained. Issei walked past them all as he made his way towards Asuya, holding on to her cold and lifeless body. He apologized over and over again for not being there for her, and that he wished that he could have done more. Seeing his pain, Rias would place her hand on his shoulder and tell him that they could bring her back. They took the sacred gear, Twilight Healing, and restored it to her body. But that wasn't what was going to bring her back. Rias would take out her bishop piece. Placing it upon her, she would incite the incantation and would allow for Asuya to be reborn. Reborn as a devil, as a bishop in service to the House of Gremory. Once the process was over, new life would be brought back to her once again. As Asuya slowly awoke to see everyone around her, Issei would be immensely happy as he pulled her close towards him, and she were happy to be in his arms as she hugged him back. They would soon make their way back to the occult research club, Issei making sure that Asya was well taken care of and that she had everything she needed. He had many decisions that he needed to make, but now he knew what he needed to do. It would be on an afternoon where Issei would be in the club room along with Rias and the others. Rias had had a private conversation with Issei, much that needed to be said, and much that needed to be known. Rias would wish Issei a safe trip, and he promised that he would be back. As Asya made her way into the room, now dressed in a school uniform, Issei would give her a key to his apartment. He told her that she and Rias would be sharing the apartment while he was gone, so she could have a place to stay in the meantime. When she asked why he wouldn't be there, he told her that there was something first that he needed to do. There was a friend that he needed to go and find, and he couldn't rest until he brought her back. She offered to go with him. She thought that she could help. Maybe he could use her twilight healing or something. But Issei would tell her that for now, she needed to stay here and try to live for once. And that there was no need to worry. He would return, he promised. Rias would still give him the offer to join the House of Gremory. And while it was tempting, she understood that there were certain things that he needed to do for himself. But he promised that he would come back one day, and he would come back with an answer, as long as the offer would still be standing by the time he did. And Rias would agree to this. However, before leaving, Rias would warn him of Lady Mephisto. She was not someone to be trusted under any circumstances. While she couldn't understand fully what Issei had gotten himself into, at the very least, she wanted him to be cautious. She truly did have concern for him, and Issei would tell her to be careful as well. And if anything happened, to give him a call, and he would come back as soon as he could. With that, he would wave to Asya from the parking lot as he got inside of the car, and he went out. As he drove, he would see the many familiar buildings, the familiar views, saying goodbye silently. And he hoped that he would make it back someday, and that when he made it back, he would be back with Irina. As he drove to the edge of town, he would stop at a diner. As he walked in, he would see a booth at the far end, next to a window, and there would be a girl there with long black hair. As he made his way, he would sit in front of her, the two of them making sure that their conversation couldn't be heard by anyone else. "I'm surprised you didn't run away, Rainier." "How could I? Knowing you, you'd track me down to the ends of the earth. And besides, it's not like I can go back to where I came from anyway. Let me make this perfectly clear. I have every right within my being to burn you alive for what you've done, to torture you, to hurt you in every way I know you fear. And you know I can do it. The only reason that you are still alive is because I am allowing it. So let me make this perfectly clear for you. If you betray me, if you lie to me, if you give me even one inkling to doubt you, you will be punished. I understand. But what are you going to do? You're going to help me. You're going to help me find Irina and bring her back. Are you stupid? Do you know what you're saying? Yeah, I know exactly what I'm saying. So eat up. Get whatever you want. It's on me. We have a long trip ahead of us. The two of them would enjoy their dinner before going into his car and driving out of town itself, heading to the west. Rainier would look over to Issei from the passenger seat of the car as she asked if he were truly serious about this. Did he really want to go to war with them? Issei merely kept his eyes on the road as they went driving off into the sunset itself. He was dead serious on getting Irina back and discovering the truth. They were going to make their way to heaven, and he was bringing the wrath of vengeance with him. Woe to anyone high above who gets in his way, for they would be burnt in his fury. This concludes What If Issei Was the Ghostwriter? High School DxD Spirit of Vengeance, Season 1, Part 2. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for next week as we are going to be going back into What If Issei Was the Shield Hero? High School DxD Curse of the Shield, Season 3, Part 1. But as always, this is going to be Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.